We are absolutely surrounded by computers. They're in our pockets, on our desks, even in our cars. We barely even give them a second thought. But have you ever just stopped and wondered, how did we get here? The story of the computer is, well, it's a wild ride. So today, let's trace that evolution, all the way from room-sized giants to the sleek little devices we practically live with.
Okay, so here's a sight we all know well, right? A modern laptop. This thing is our window to the world. It's our office. It's our movie theater. We just take for granted that we can pick it up and go. But this incredible piece of tech has a really, really fascinating family tree.
But where did it all start? I mean, what did the great-great-grandparent of your laptop actually look like? Well, the answer? It might just shock you. Yeah, this was a computer. And no, your eyes are not deceiving you. This massive, room-sized tangle of wires and panels is the ENIAC, one of the very first electronic computers. The difference between this beast and the laptop we just saw is staggering, and it's the perfect place to start our journey through the 5 generations of computing. You can really break down the whole story of the computer into 5 distinct generations, and each one is defined by a huge, game-changing technological leap. So think of this as our roadmap for the trip we're about to take. So let's start at the beginning. We're in the post-war era, and we're entering the first generation, the age of giants. Now, the heart of these early computers wasn't a silicon chip. It was the vacuum tube. We're talking thousands and thousands of these glass tubes controlling the flow of electricity. They were basically the machine's brain and memory all rolled into one. But, as you can imagine, these giants had some, well, giant problems. They took up entire rooms, they cost an absolute fortune, and they guzzled electricity like you wouldn't believe. They also generated so much heat that they were constantly breaking down. Can you imagine being the poor soul who had to find the one faulty tube among thousands just to get the thing working again? What a nightmare. So, yeah, clearly something had to change. And that change sparked a revolution that brings us right into the second generation of computing. And here it is, the solution. That bulky, fragile vacuum tube was replaced by this tiny, solid little device, the transistor. This was a complete and total game changer. And just to give you an idea of how big a deal this was, a single transistor could do the work of 40 vacuum tubes. 40! This wasn't just a small step forward, folks. This was a giant leap in making things smaller and way more efficient. And the impact was immediate. All of a sudden, computers could be built smaller, faster, and cheaper. They used way less power, and they were so much more reliable than those old vacuum tube machines. This one invention pretty much solved every single major problem of that first generation. Okay, so we've gone from vacuum tubes to transistors. What could possibly be next? Well, the third generation was all about taking that idea and kicking it up a notch with something called integration. So instead of using just one transistor at a time, engineers figured out how to shrink down and pack hundreds of them onto a single tiny silicon chip. This was the integrated circuit. It was another massive, massive step in making computers smaller and way, way more powerful. The advantage here was just huge. These new machines were unbelievably fast. We're talking about carrying out instructions in billionths of a second. And for the very first time, people could interact with them using keyboards and monitors instead of clunky old punch cards. This opened up the world of computing to a much wider audience. It's really when computers started to move out of the lab and into the office. So this trend of packing more and more stuff onto a single chip, it really hit its peak in the fourth generation. This is the era that finally brought the computer into our homes. So, the next leap, even more incredible. Engineers figured out how to cram thousands of integrated circuits onto a single silicon chip. This wasn't just another component. This was the entire brain of a computer on one tiny little square. This is the microprocessor. And what happens when you have all these new, small, powerful computers? Well, you start to connect them. And these networks just grew and grew and eventually formed the single most transformative technology of our time, the internet. And thanks to that microprocessor, the personal computer, the PC, finally became a reality. All the power that once filled an entire room could now fit right on your desk. This is the generation that put computing power directly into the hands of you and me. And that brings us to today, the fifth generation. This one is defined by a totally different kind of leap.
It's not just about speed or size anymore. It's about intelligence.
The defining technology of our current era is artificial intelligence. We've actually moved beyond computers that just follow a list of instructions to devices that can understand us when we talk, that can learn from data, and can even organize themselves.
And look, this isn't some far-off science fiction thing. You use it every single day. When Google Maps predicts traffic, that's AI. When Uber gives you an arrival time, that's AI. When you ask a smart assistant a question, you're talking to an AI. It's everywhere. So, after this incredible 80-year journey, here we are in a world just full of computers of all shapes and sizes. But how do we even make sense of them all? Let's take a quick look at how we can categorize them.
There are two really easy ways to think about it. First, what's its purpose? A general-purpose computer, like your laptop or phone, can do a ton of different things, but a special-purpose computer has one very specific job, like the little computer that controls a traffic light. The second way is by power. At the very top, you have these incredible supercomputers that can do things like forecast the weather. And then you have microcomputers, which is basically all the devices we use every day, from our desktops to our smartwatches.
So, from computers that filled entire rooms to AI that fits right in our pockets, it has been an absolutely incredible journey. We've seen 5 generations of mind-blowing progress, with each one building on the last. And it really makes you wonder, what on earth will the 6th generation bring? What will the computers of the future even be capable of?